What is up, guys? My name is Jason, and welcome to the Conspirators Podcast channel, where I talk about everything from the unexplained to the completely insane. Due to the nature of the channel, some content may not be suitable for some audiences, so listener discretion is advised. Alright, guys, this story occurs more recently in the 21st century. We're now looking at April 29th, 2001. The mysterious and unexplained disappearance of 6-year-old little Haley Zaga. She went up hiking with her grandparents in Arkansas in an area that is known as the Upper Buffalo Wilderness Area. Now, obviously, what classifies as a wilderness area is somewhere that is quite remote, quite wild, like no cars can actually get there. So it's very remote and very wild. Now, Haley's grandparents enjoyed hiking. They did it quite often, as I said, but they decided they wanted to hike up to the bluff, which was about 60 meters up in the trail. It was this beautiful, like, overhang overlooking a river. Very nice scenery. They walked up, everything was fine. Took little Haley up, and everything was great. And that took them most of the morning. And at about 11 o'clock, they decided to turn and make their way back down from the bluff, down the pathway. At about 11:30, as they're making their way down, Haley sees this waterfall, or just off, like just to the side of the trail, like down, and sees this and tells her grandparents, no, she wants to go and see this waterfall. So her grandparents take a look and go check it out, but see that it's not very easily accessible, like it's down off a cliff, and the only way they can really see to get down is to climb down this tree to get down to the waterfall to see it, and then obviously to get back up the cliff, you'll have to climb up the tree again. Now, obviously, being a 6-year-old little girl, Haley's grandparents weren't happy or comfortable with her climbing this tree to get up and down the side of a cliff. So they obviously told her no, like they don't want her to go, they're not comfortable with it. Come now, we're just going to head back down the trail. Now, being a 6-year-old little girl, Haley obviously decides no, she wants to get her way, so sits down, huffs and puffs, throws a little tantrum, and refuses to follow, saying that she's not going to go. If they're not going to take her down, she's not going to go. They're going to have to carry her. So obviously her grandparents, having been parents themselves, know how to deal with it. So they obviously tell her no, they're not going to carry her, and if she's not going to follow them, they're going to carry on down the pathway, and if she doesn't follow, they're going to leave her behind. So they turn and start making their way down the trail, obviously expecting Haley to obviously get up and follow, which she does. She gets up, huffs and puffs, and stomps away, dragging her heels, purposefully taking her time, trying to create frustration, in hopes that she'll actually get her way and like irritate her grandparents enough that they'll let her go down, see the waterfall. So her grandparents obviously notice this and just keep walking, making sure not to get too far ahead so they can keep Haley in view, that she's not too far or out of sight, constantly looking back to make sure she was there and she was following, and that she was still within eyeshot. But at some point, as they keep looking back, they see Haley's there carrying on. They look back and Haley's gone. Nowhere to be seen. She's just disappeared from the trail. So immediately they run back up the trail, looking for her, trying to find where she is. Nothing too panicked yet. Assuming that Haley's probably just jumped off the path, hidden behind a tree or behind a bush or something. In hopes to increase frustration. Trying to get her way. Again, they continue searching. Calling out to her like, Haley, come on out. This isn't funny. Let's carry on, come out to Granny and Grandpa, we're going to carry on down the trail. And nothing. There was only silence. For about 90 minutes, they search up and down this trail and nothing. They just cannot find Haley anywhere. So at this point, the panic and worry sets in and they run down the trail and call the police. And this is when the largest search and rescue mission in Arkansas history was launched in search for Haley Zaga. There were hundreds upon hundreds of ground searches. They had about 8 dog teams. They had helicopters in the air, firefighters. They had the National Guard looking for her. A full team. Like I said, the largest search and rescue mission in Arkansas history had started in search for this little 6-year-old girl. About 2 days went by and nothing had been found. And obviously things were looking grim. At this point, one of the search dog teams had picked up on her scent, and they followed this up through the woods, and it led up to a road which it connected to. And at this point, it looked very grim. It looked like Haley had possibly been picked up by a passing car or someone passing by, um, which wasn't great. Obviously, to eliminate all other possibilities, they continued the search and carried on looking. And about 51 hours into this rescue mission, there were two searchers that had gone further out from the original designated area, about 3 kilometers further out. And this is where they spotted Haley, this little girl sitting with her feet dangling in a stream, just sitting perched up on this rock, her feet in the stream. And as they approached, she saw them and waved to them, greeted them and everything. And they went over to her to confirm, hi, are you perhaps Haley Zaga? Which she confirmed, yes, she was. She had a couple of scratches on her, on her arms and maybe a bit on her face, but other than that, nothing serious. She was okay. Haley was all right. So the searchers obviously took her back and reunited her with her family, who then took her to hospital to get checked out to make sure she was okay. And once she had regained some of her strength, the investigators came in to question her on what exactly happened and, where did she go? She proceeded to tell them that she was walking down the path, following her grandparents. She was looking down, watching her feet, kicking stones and stuff, as a little temper tantrum 6-year-old would do. And when she looked back up, her grandparents and the path were just gone. She was staring at this wall of trees and had no idea where she was. Now, being a 6-year-old, obviously she didn't probably think rationally or logically and call out and see if she could find anyone or hear where they were. She just, in her 6-year-old mind, decided she was going to carry on walking in the direction she was and hopefully stumble back upon the trail, which unfortunately she didn't. She could not find the trail, and eventually it started to get dark, and Haley found herself back up on the bluff where she eventually spent the first night. When the sun came up the next morning, Haley explained how she made her way down the bluff and carried on walking down and found a river, which she then walked along until she found a cave. And at this point, it was getting dark again, so she spent her second night in the cave. And the next morning or the next day was when she was found by the stream, by the searchers. Investigators were baffled by this, asking, is she sure she was up on the bluff? Is she 100% sure she was on the bluff? Because they had helicopters up searching all over the bluff. That's all they did, was fly around over the bluff, scanning and searching with thermal imaging, which would have picked Haley up if she was on the bluff. And they could not find anything. They did not see any trace of her there. And to this, Haley responded quite confidently, telling investigators, no, she's sure she was definitely up on the bluff, because that's where Alicia had told her to stay. Now, slightly confused, investigators started asking, okay, but who is Alicia? Who is this person? Which Haley explained is her imaginary friend that she met now up on the bluff. So immediately, obviously, they assumed that this was obviously her way of, dealing with a traumatic event that had obviously now occurred, and they didn't need to pay much attention to this. It was just the traumatic dealings of a 6-year-old mind, so it was nothing to pay attention to. So they obviously continued with her questioning, finding out about the events that led her from up on the bluff down to the stream where she was found, and led the conversation or the investigation with, how did she get back down from the bluff? Because there's only really one way down from there, and if you've lost the trail, it can be very tricky and very difficult to actually get down and to climb down from the bluff. To which Haley explained that Alicia had led her to a trail, and then had helped her down, helped her climb down from the bluff, as in standing in front of her, physically helping her that so she didn't fall to get down from the bluff. And at this point, obviously, the investigators thought, okay, hang on, maybe Alicia is maybe more than just a imaginary friend. It's literally because this person is literally helping them to physically climb down from the bluff. So investigators asked Haley to maybe, describe Alicia for them and to give them a bit more of an idea of who this is. So she was more than happy to oblige and explain that Alicia was this girl with black hair. She had brown eyes. She was a bit shorter than Haley. She was 4 years old. Alicia liked to tell jokes and liked to sing songs. And from here, Haley decided to sing some of the songs and tell some of the jokes that she had learned from Alicia. And even though Haley had given this really extremely vivid description of Alicia, it just didn't seem possible how a 4-year-old little girl was out there on her own, all alone, wandering over the bluff. It just didn't seem possible. It didn't seem like it was real. So they went on just assuming, okay, Alicia must have just been, a coping mechanism for Haley, and left it at that. It's just obviously the way her brain remembers the events because of the traumatic experience. And after that, Haley was deemed, fit to go home and was discharged from hospital, allowed to go home with her family. But at this point, the case was all over the news, with agents out interviewing her and stuff. And in some of these interviews, Haley was able to tell her story of what happened up on the bluff and her way down, and her events and her interactions with Alicia. And this interview was actually put to print. After it was published, though, some of the readers of this actually came back saying they reported they knew of another little girl who had gone missing in the exact same location, at the exact same spot that Haley had gone missing. This was just like 23 years earlier. And her name was Alana. She was 4 years old, had black hair, and had brown eyes. And sadly, she actually ended up dying up on the bluff. Now, obviously, once this connection was brought to, brought to attention, national media was all over this. Like, this was brought to the attention of national media, with media agents all over. It's now saying that Haley's imaginary friend Alicia was actually this little girl Alana, who was literally her guardian angel. That had like led her down like from the bluff to where she was inevitably found. And funny enough, Haley, who now is about like 26 years old, actually released a video sometime last year on her YouTube channel, explaining and describing her whole experience of what happened in this whole ordeal, and her encounter and her recollection of what happened. And she goes on to explain that before Alicia, she never had any imaginary friends, and after Alicia, she never had any other imaginary friends. But at that time, during this whole ordeal, Alicia was very real to her at least, and actually ended up saving her life. Now, obviously, this brings up and opens up a whole can of worms about what happened to Haley Zaga. Where did she go? What occurred? Some people might say it's just the traumatic recollection of a 6-year-old's mind having twisted and distorted memories into what she believes or remembers today as what happened to her on that tragic time. It also could be a case, if you look at it from a more supernatural side of things, where Haley may have stumbled upon a interdimensional rift, and as much as she was still up on the bluff, Haley may have stumbled into an alternate or parallel dimension, which is why obviously the helicopters would not have seen her in that reality up on that bluff. There was no thermal imaging that picked up Haley there, but Haley was definitely up on the bluff. After all, she was found within that area. She was only 3 kilometers from where she actually disappeared, so not very far. So she hadn't gone far. Helicopters would have picked her up, but for some reason, Haley just seemed to almost vanish from where she was into a completely different place, and was all of a sudden just suddenly found again in the surrounding area. So it almost opens it up to think, what could have possibly happened? Was it obviously just a standard logical explanation of the recollection of a 6-year-old and how she's dealing with a traumatic experience? Or is there something supernatural or some kind of conspiracy theory that explains what happened to Haley Zaga? Will we ever know? Who knows? Let me know what you guys think, because I'm quite stumped. This is quite the story, and quite a freaky one at that. Little girl finds a imaginary friend, first time in her life, never having had one before, up on the bluff. This little girl of 4 years old somehow is able to not only guide Haley and lead her down from the bluff down to safety into a location where she ends up being found, but this 4-year-old literally saves Haley's life. And Haley, thankfully, unlike Alana, made it back alive and off of the bluff. And who knows? Is it spirits involved? Interdimensionals? Who knows? Will we ever know? That's up to you guys to decide. So for now, thanks for joining me today. Please don't forget to leave a review of the channel on your preferred listening platform. It really does help out the channel, and I appreciate all the support. Thanks for listening today, guys, and I'll catch you all here next time. Bye for now.